Chief Daniel Davis, and you'll hear from him in this presentation. The Utilities Bureau Chief Allison Ford. You'll hear from her, and of course, you'll hear from me for Environmental Services, and I'm the Environmental Service Bureau Chief. So just an overview of the capital budgeting. First, I just want to show the planned service area for water and sewer, and to describe the legend. So the pink area that you see on the eastern part of the county is the county planned service area. And this is where we can provide water and sewer. And then we have a very small pink hatched area slightly to the west. And this is the Alpha Ridge and Marriottsville area. And in this area, we only supply water and no sewer. Then the western part of the county is in gray, and this is the no planned service area. This is where there's water and sewer is by well and septic. And then in the green, we have the shared, this is where the ground doesn't perk well. We have shared sewer disposal areas. I'm going to turn this part over to Daniel very quickly to describe the drinking water systems, where it comes in and who we get it from. Daniel?
Sure. Thanks, Mark. Anybody hear me? Hi,
Yes.
Daniel Davis, Bureau Chief for Engineering. This map here shows the PSA area for the county. That's the blue area over here and the darker blue area. And it shows the sources of supply for water coming into the county. We have two sources of supply from Baltimore City. One's the Ashburton Water Plant, and the other one is the Montebello Water Plant. And we also have a third supply coming from the southern end, comes from WSC at the Little Patuxent Plant. Back to you.
You can handle this one.
Keep on going. Sure. Next slide. So this slide here, it depicts the water system. It shows the water system for the county in the planned service area separated into pressure zones. We have 10 pressure zones. It also shows, again, the water supply points coming in from the city. As you see, there's two of them up toward Route 40, one down toward Gun Road and one in Elk Ridge, and then the lower one coming into what we call the 400 zone of Laurel at the far end. We have also shown on this map 10 elevated water tanks spread out through the county and into the different zones. The yellow area that you see on there is what we call the 550 zone, and that's our main and primary zone within the water system. And what that zone does, that's our primary zone. We redistribute water to the other pressure zones, either by pumping it up for areas of high elevation or reducing it down with pressure regulating valves for lower elevations. Next slide.
You take this one too for the sewers.
Yeah, sure. So this map, again, is an overlay of what we call the planned service area, and it shows the sewers. So the sewage flows in the PSA are divided between the line, the thick line running kind of like along the eastern side there. But what it's showing you here is that the Little Patuxent Water Reclamation Basin is served by the county-owned and operated Little Patuxent Water Treatment Plant, which is down in Savage. And then on the eastern side of the county, sewage, as you see in there, it says Patapsco Wastewater Treatment Basin. That basin is served by Baltimore City's Patapsco Wastewater Treatment Plant. So the flow and the other areas within those particular basins are what we call sub-basins within the larger basin. So flow on the right side or eastern side of the map goes into the Patapsco Wastewater Treatment Plant, and flow on the west side in the PSA that you see on the left side in the middle there is all going down to our county Little Patuxent treatment plant.
Okay.
Next slide.
And I'll take this one. So, and what this is, an overview of the stormwater system and the storm drain system. And we thought we would just give relative numbers here so you can understand the magnitude of the system. So there are approximately 30,220 storm drain inlets in the county that need maintenance and attention. We have 42,961 manholes storm drain manholes, not sewer manholes, but just storm drain. And we have 577 major outfalls. Um, and a lot of this is maintained by our Bureau of Highways. Excuse me. We have 832 miles of storm drain pipes, also maintained by the Bureau of Highways. And the last category is best management practices, which really includes stormwater management, ponds, bioswales, um, rain gardens, all of the techniques that are used to capture stormwater and then release it is called a best management practice. And there are several, but we have in the county right now, we have approximately 15,544. And of course, we'll talk a little bit more about BMPs, best management practices, a little bit later under stormwater. But now I wanted to, and solid waste, our solid waste management map, just so for an overview. Trash and recycling is done throughout the entire county, but in the green highlighted areas, we collect food scraps, and also in what would be the planned service area, pretty much the planned service area, we also collect other types of organics like wood waste, things like that. The dots that you see are our landfills. The blue dot is New Cut landfill that was closed in 1980 when the red dot, Alpha Ridge, was opened, and it's still our only active landfill. And Carrs Mill landfill, the yellow dot in western Howard County, is also a closed landfill. The capital budget process is an interesting one, and we thought we would share it with you. It has a lot of stakeholder input, and stakeholders are typically, but not exclusively, residents and commercial customers in the county, the administration, county council, regulators, and county staff. And the flow chart kind of moves from left to right, and we have first where a capital project is thought of, the concept of capital project by a stakeholder group to identify certain needs. Then in Public Works, we would draft up a scope of work and delineate the work in some other ways. This is then presented to the director to be prioritized. It gets administrative concurrence that they would like to put it forth in the budget. From that point, it goes to the planning board if it's a new project or if it's a significantly changed project. And all the while, during all of that, there are stakeholder inputs, and most notably at all the public meeting nodes. And then it goes to the county council for a vote to be included in that fiscal year's capital budget. Of course, you have citizen input at that point as well. If it is part of the budget and gets approved, then Public Works moves to execute the project. And now I want to talk, I think we'll talk more about water and sewer master planning, and I'm going to turn that over to Allison Ford. And I think, Allison, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. And you can see the slides?
Yes.
All
Thank
right.
you. Thank you, Mark. My name is Allison Ford, and we'll talk about water and sewer master planning, as Mark stated. The Maryland Department of the Environment requires jurisdiction to provide reviews of the water and sewer master plan once every 3 years. And the Department of Public Works is responsible for preparing and updating Howard County's water and sewer master plan in concert with the county's general plan. The major amendments are completed every 5 years, with interim amendments completed on an annual basis. We are currently undergoing a major amendment to the Water and Sewer Master Plan. That amendment was delayed to coincide with the 2023 General Plan update. Next slide, please. Thank you. Here we have information regarding the available potable water supply and use. And you can see the two different water sources that our utility purchases water from is Baltimore City and WSSC. The current the current average daily use in million gallons per day total for both sources is at 25.1 million gallons per day. The contracted allotment is at 41.5 million gallons per day. That contracted allotment is the daily average limit that has been negotiated, contractually negotiated between Howard County and each of these utilities. Population estimates have a correlated projected average daily use for 2040. And the total there is 29.9 million gallons per day. For 2040, we have the planned contract allotment. The total is 48.5. This number is really a estimate because the contracts with Baltimore City and WSSC have not been completed for 2040. There are discussions regarding an additional supply point for WSSC, which would create some additional system redundancy. So that is why the contracted allotment that's currently at 3 is shown at 2040 as being 10. However, those contracts have not been finalized, and that supply point has not been finalized and constructed. I'll go ahead to the next slide. Thank you. Now for discussions regarding the Howard County's wastewater capacity and use. So the two treatment facilities that Daniel showed on the drawing earlier, the Patapsco treatment plant, which serves that eastern portion of the county, that's Baltimore City's wastewater treatment plant, and Howard County's Little Patuxent treatment plant. Currently, our average daily wastewater flows going to both of these plants is at 29.2 million gallons per day. The contracted capacity, which really applies to that Patapsco plant, is at 12.4 million gallons per day. Little Patuxent wastewater water reclamation facility is rated at 29 million gallons per day. That's the capacity of the treatment facility. For 2040, the projected average daily use for the Patapsco the area, the collection system that flows through Patapsco is 9.7 MGD, and Little Patuxent is at 24.6 MGD. That planned contracted capacity isn't updated significantly at all because the contract with Baltimore City has not been updated. We'll note that Little Patuxent, once we reach our daily use of 80% of the capacity of the treatment plant, there's a regulatory requirement that we start a facility upgrade. We're estimating to reach that 80% point in approximately 2030, and then we'll start a facility upgrade plan that would be covered by Daniel's group in engineering and specifically utility design division. And now I will transfer to Daniel Davis, Chief of the Bureau of Engineering.
All right, thanks, Allison. Next slide. So what I want to start off with is to show this slide here. This says our water main break history, showing water main breaks from the past 22 years. Planning for projects to renew our assets is key function of the Department of Public Works to ensure that our facilities can meet the demands of the public. And what you see in here right now is basically how our trends have been for water main breaks over the past 22 years. To counter these kind of trends, what you see on the screen, capital projects are designed and introduced and implemented through the planning process, which I'm going to describe in greater detail next. Next slide. The key takeaway I would like you to have from this slide is to show you that the Water and Sewer Design Manual, which was enacted in 1975, is one of 4 manuals in the County Design Manual series. The Design Manual number 2 is intended to provide a summary of all the water and sewer needs, the criteria, the procedures, and the practices applicable to providing and undertaking public water here in the county, and also sewer projects. Each design manual right now, as it says on here, is currently under design update to be coordinated. Next slide. Sure. So the capital planning process. A capital project may arise from any of several administrative means. The common identifying feature distinguishing a capital project from a developer project is that the funds for implementation of a capital project are allocated through the regular budgetary process within the Howard County process that was described earlier. Capital projects may involve the installation of major elements of the water and sewer system, such as water supply, transmission, or storage facilities that you have seen, sewer outfalls, interceptors, and even our treatment facilities. Next slide, please. In contrast to that, a developer project arises when a land developer engages in the subdivision of land or the development of a parcel of land, either of which fall under the requirements of the subdivision of land development regulations. If, say, for example, a lot or parcel to be developed are within the metropolitan district, which is within the planned service area, and in the 0 to 5 year service area, as defined in the master plan which governs water and sewer, each lot or parcel created through the subdivision and land development process shall front directly onto public water and sewer. That's a requirement in the land development regulations. When this is the case, the developer will be required to completely underwrite the cost of construction of these facilities and will cause the preparation of an engineering report, the development of plans and specifications, any easements that are necessary, the stakeout, inspection, and construction of the work. A developer project is represented by a signed contract called a developer agreement between the developer and the county. The developer agreement identifies the area to be served and the financing requirements. The developer agreement also stipulates the terms and conditions of rebates to be made to the developer upon successful completion of the development. The rebated portion of the construction cost is recoverable by the rate structure of charges universally applied to property owners serviced by the system constructed under the developer agreement. Next slide, please. So engineering reports. So whenever there's a requirement in the design manual for an engineering report to be provided for developer or capital projects alike, and are required whenever a water or sewer extension or improvements are being considered for construction. The report is intended to be a concise presentation of all the relevant facts of a project or proposal, and for satisfying the needs of inclusive of costs, anything related to the design, and also any recommendations to show that the project is consistent with county standards, state standards, and any federal guidelines. And now I'll turn it back over to Mark DeLuca.
Okay. Thanks, Daniel. I'll talk about stormwater and solid waste planning. And I may also ask Chad to kick in a little bit on the stormwater side, because the stormwater is actually first conceived of when the developer comes in, and the storm drains as well. So stormwater and storm drains are proposed during the time of site development, and it's its adequacy is determined when the plans are still at planning and zoning. And Chad, if you'd want to just expand briefly on how you go about deciding if what's adequate in terms of stormwater and what's adequate in terms of storm drain, that might be helpful.
Sure. So today, Maryland Department of Environment has requirements that we are mandated to follow. The stormwater requirements are to address management for the 1-year storm event, which is a 2.7-inch rainstorm over a 24-hour period. And that is done by what they call environmental site design, ESD for short. And instead of the old school big ponds, catching it at the bottom of the hill and discharging at a single point, they want to mimic what is the existing conditions before development. They want to put it in smaller practices with a drainage area of approximately a half an acre or smaller. The discharge points, instead of being large pipes, they may only be 8-inch under drain type pipes. Because every time you put water in a pipe, you have to have an outfall, and a lot of times that's where your erosion starts. So they're trying to mimic the existing conditions today. Those types of facilities, ESD, are things like the bioretention facilities and rain gardens, very similar. They're small practices, usually about a foot deep. They're planted. They look like sunken flower beds, but underneath they have a lot going on. They have under drains and over drains and sand and gravel, and they're planted to take up phosphorus. Other practices are dry wells, but all of these will have very small drainage areas. Storm drains, delivering water there, we have to make sure the water gets there. The storm drain itself is designed to carry the 10-year storm event to that facility. We do have areas in the county, everybody knows Ellicott City, the issues we've had in Ellicott City, where we have higher standards. They not only have to do the 1-year storm event, but they also have to provide storm management for the 10, the 100, and the 2016 storm event, which was 6.6 inches of rain in about 3.5 hours. So it was very quick, flashy type of storm event that occurred. So in places, locations like that, you would have your small practices, your ESD practices, and then you would have a larger facility like a pond or underground storage tanks, like pipes connected together to store large volumes. I'll stop right there. Hand it back to Mark on that one.
Okay, thanks. I think that goes a long way to describe how the storm drain and storm water comes about, and so it's in the development process. But after construction, after it's built and there's an acceptance, the facilities that are built are taken into the county inventory, and then we inspect them for compliance on a 3-year or a triennial basis as required under MDE mandate. And we have something called an MS4 permit, which I'm sure all of you have heard of, spoken about before, and it stands for Municipal Separate Sewer System permit. So the total number of facilities in service this year, like I had mentioned before, is 15,514. We have to track them. We have to inspect them once every 3 years. And if they don't pass inspection, we have to tell, if they're on private property, we issue a letter saying, we recently inspected your property and you have to repair it, or it's in good shape, or whatever. What we've seen is that these facilities are growing. Well, the pandemic really put a squash on what we had been seeing previously. These facilities were going up almost at an exponential rate. And then through the pandemic, we didn't see very much of a growth. But now since 24, we see it at 15,500. 25, we can see that we're estimating that by the end of calendar year 25, we'll probably have 16,800. And we're projecting in 26, we'll probably have 17,900. So they're still going up. And we expect them to go up. The facilities are inspected by the Stormwater Management Division, and we hire consultants to help us do this. The average increase constructed, as I was mentioning before, well, it's a result of new housing or commercial development, and it's about 7.6% a year. The inspection and compliance effort is funded by the Watershed Protection and Restoration Fee, which is assessed each year on each county property owner, or whether they're residential or commercial. And because it's regulated within the design approval process and it's fee-based for monitoring and compliance, the impact is somewhat indirect on adequate public facilities. There will be a time when we'll have more facilities and we'll have to have more people going out to meet this 3-year requirement, and it'll be more expensive to do, and the stormwater fee may go up again. And then you may remember that it just went up. We don't anticipate that it's going to go up. It'll have that kind of increase for a while, but it is a fee-based item and can go up.
Mark, a quick question, if I may.
Sure, Todd.
These are growing faster than the number of additional housing units are growing, and 50% of the additional housing units are apartments. So what accounts for the growth from 24 to 25 and 25 to 26 when we're only seeing 3 or 4 or 500 units per year of of single family homes that are adding these on-site rain gardens?
Well, they're not only rain gardens, and I think what we're seeing is that the best management practices are getting smaller, and they're getting more numerous. And so some of the practices that are acceptable are, Chad started to mention that they are dry wells. They could be a rain garden, but they could also be it could also be a disconnect on a downspout that needs to be inspected, and it could be 4 downspouts that would have to check. So these types of devices or facilities are evolving, and we are still seeing a growth. Like the 25 estimate, there's pipeline projects that we know will bring on a good bit of that 16,000. So, and these aren't per year. This is the estimated growth. So we had 15 in our system, and it will have 16,000 in our system in 25 and 17,000 in our system in 26. I just want to make sure that others aren't misinterpreting that. So
if you're doing this on inspecting on a triennial basis, then you're doing
1/3.
5,000 or 5,500 a year inspections.
Correct.
Do you have the capacity to do that? I mean, that's an enormous number.
Hey, Todd, could I ask, we only have 1 slide left and then it's questions. Can we do that
Okay,
last slide and then do the questions, please?
Fair, yeah.
A very pragmatic statement. Okay, but I'll answer that, and I'll be glad to answer that, Todd. So on the last slide is the solid waste service capacity planning, and we use data provided by planning and zoning to estimate population growth. And this table here is the population growth from 2025 to 2040. And you can see, and the way the table is broken down, and you may be familiar with it by looking at DPZ data before, that we have household populations in 2025 are estimated to be 340,762. Group quarter populations, 3,077 for a total population of 34,839. The group quarters housing are, and Jeff is still here. He could explain it better, but it's it is the apartments, it is the senior living, and some other living arrangements where they don't necessarily pay a property tax directly to the county, but they may be on land that where someone else is paying the property tax. And Jeff, are you still there? Did I get that right?
Yes, I'm still here. Yeah, everything you mentioned, Mark, assisted living, nursing homes. It also includes the Howard County Detention Center. In fact, that's most of the number there. Most of the 3,000 is the Howard County Detention Center. So it's not we might get, one or two new assisted living projects in the future, but we don't know when they're going to come. But so the group quarters really isn't expected to increase significantly in the future. That's why it's shown as fixed.
So new households are subject to the annual trash fee. And that pretty much, the trash fee is calculated in such a way that it takes into consideration all about the costs for curbside services, the use of the recycling convenience center at Alpha Ridge, the transportation of trash, recycling, compost, and other organics off of the curb, diverted to either Alpha Ridge or our transfer facility at Annapolis Junction. Now, we then send the waste from Annapolis Junction by rail to a landfill in King George, Virginia. And that was since 1999, Howard County has been contracted with Waste Management to export nearly all the waste that we generate, that residents generate, not commercial, but residential, to the landfill located in King George, Virginia. And currently, King George has a capacity to accept our waste beyond our planning horizon of 2040. This is monitored and updated every 3 years. So our plan gets updated every 3 years. And I did skip over the current amount of residential waste generated per capita is calculated, and it's approximately half a ton per year per capita. And we use that as a rule of thumb to plan for future capacity. Like I was saying before, our master plan is updated every 10 years with progress reports that we issue every 3 years. We update the per capita rates of waste generation to see what we will be paying potentially in the future. Because it's fee-based, there's no direct impact caused by growth in public facilities, not directly anyway. However, we do kind of want to ensure that adequate public facilities do exist for the services. For instance, roads that are designed with the proper length and turnaround capability to allow for the collection vehicles to assess the households. And we heard, and everything's a trade-off, and we heard, about maybe ways we may be redesigning our neighborhoods in the future, and different ways we'll think of transportation. But as long as we are considering the type of services that we provide, like this waste, collection, and also snow removal, debris removal, things like that, we need to make sure that we can pick up and provide these services. And the last point about solid waste is to remind everyone that county zoning, we need them to allow for material and recycling facilities as well as organic processing facilities to be allowed under M1 and M2 designations. We wouldn't want general plans to limit what could be done under the heaviest of industrial zoning, and where we couldn't, have a transfer facility or a recycling, a materials recycling plant, things like that. So that's all that we had prepared for water, wastewater, solid waste, and stormwater. And if you have any questions, we could take them now. You can still hear me, right?
We can.
Good.
So just going backwards a little bit, Mark. So the inspection regime of these 15, 16, 17,000 stormwater devices, that just gets added to your annual operating budget, correct?
Well, no, not necessarily. It used to, but now it's more fee-based in that, those costs for inspection, those things are done because they're mandated through the MS4 program, and it's part of our watershed restoration fee. And so it's fee-based in that sense. So everyone pays into the fee annually, and um, and so as a new house comes on, they pay a fee. A new business comes into the county, they pay a fee.
And then
But
there's an annual fee as well, correct?
that's the fee that I'm referring to. It's that
Yeah.
annual fee.
Right. Okay. Yeah. The so-called rain tax, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Right. Right. Okay. Gotcha. And is that money actually set aside, that annual collection,
Yes.
or is that just going to the general fund and then your budget runs through the general fund as well?
So it's a special fund that's set up, and it's very much like the trash fee. It's a special fund. Trash fee goes into the environmental fund, and monies that are collected for stormwater fees are on property tax bills are kept in the watershed restoration fund. And so there are special funds that have their own budgets and their own accounting and are not part of the general funds.
Thank you.
I have my hand up. I can't see if anyone else has their hand up, but I have my
You
hand up.
want me to stop sharing? I think we'd be able to see better.
Currently, Laura is the only one who had her hand up.
Okay, okay. And just to go back to what you just asked, Todd, I believe that's called the lockbox. That's how they handle that. When you get funds like that, I think the legislator refers to that as a lockbox fund. So it's only used for that thing. But my question is for Mr. Davis. So you said the two ways that these things get done is one is driven by the residents, which to me, I would interpret that to mean these are old things that get broken and need to be fixed. And then you have the developer driven. So my question is, here in 2023 or 24 or whatever year you have the most recent numbers, what percentage of what you're doing is just because we're trying to fix all of our old stuff compared to what we're doing for new development? Can you break that down?
So from a capital standpoint, we don't do capital projects for new development. Like developers are responsible for doing the work for their particular new development.
Right,
When we
I
talk,
understand that, but like of
right.
all the work that's being done, right?
Mhm.
Like how much of that is because we're fixing old stuff and how much is new stuff, right? Do you know?
Well, I would say the predominant amount is all about maintenance and repairs, because right now the system is pretty much built out. Just like development in the county is getting to be pretty much built out. So we already have the system in place. So now it's a matter of some of the older stuff needs to be repaired, and everything has to be maintained. So that's the majority of what the capital project program is about. And then sometimes we also have to do stuff related to capacity increases when we talk about the big interceptors. So that's a function of the budget too. So if I had to take a quick guess on it, I would say it's somewhere around a 70-25 split.
Okay, so a
I
lot of
can-
what needs to be done doesn't really have to do with essentially new development. It's what's I don't know if it was built to capacity when it was first done. Looking at some of those numbers, we have a lot of capacity that we're not using. So just for me to get a grasp of, you know, how much of what we're dealing with is just because of the age of our infrastructure, as opposed to, oh, they're building 50 new houses over there, kind of a thing.
Right, yeah. So like I was trying to explain, the work that we generally do from a capital standpoint isn't because of new development. If a new development, for example, came in and it needed to increase, it caused an increase in the size of a pumping station for sewage, for example, right? That wasn't already built into the system previously, then that developer would be responsible for upgrading the pumping station to meet the needs of this new development. Exclude as outside of the capital side of things from our budget.
Right.
Okay, hope I answered your question.
Yes, thank you. I'm just trying to get an idea of what we have and, you know, the condition it's in, as opposed to what we need to grow the county, and just kind of what that's gonna look like. Thank you. Yeah, you answered my question. Thank
Sure.
Brent Lovelace has his hand up.
Thank you. We covered quite a few topics here to end on questions on the other one, but I'm seeing the history of APFO actually started way back when we ran out of water and sewer and we were building 6,000 homes a year, and it became very critical that we started managing our growth. Here we are 30 years later, we got almost the perfect service model for trash. We're just sending it out and we have very low capital expenses as we grow. But if that service agreement with King George skyrockets or gets discontinued, we're back in the landfill business. Likewise with water and sewer, you can see we are growing and we're going to have some capital projects. And it looks like we need a 20% overhead capacity built in there. So it's a little tighter than we look at. And I just want to caution, we should look at, even though we don't need it now, the potential for future needs to include these items in our APFO to handle potential contingencies if our contracts for water, solid waste, and everything change rapidly in the market. And one last wrap up, it's very important. The last APFO committee I was on, I was recommending sidewalks to the committee. And at the very same time, we took a vote, and the vote was turned down to include sidewalks in APFO. Someone was killed at the exact site I was describing. Now, here we are a decade later, and we're looking at the Complete Streets Manual, and it's got a lot of great features in there. But I am concerned that some of the recommendations in there are or items. There's a lot difference between 100 linear feet of road and 100 linear feet of bicycle path or sidewalk. And we have to make sure that we handle the adequacy of the primary need as well as the safety and enhanced features that we want as a community. So keep that in mind as we consider recommendations going forward. And I apologize, that's less of a question, but I'm sure some of our officials may want to opine from there. Thank you.
I see Mark has his hand up. Do you, Mark?
Yes, I do. So I wanted to comment on what Brent said. I think that it's a very good point that you make about water and sewer and trash. And I think that these are not unlimited resources. And I think it's important that everyone understand that they're not unlimited resources. And they may be susceptible to a shock in the system that would ripple through the whole region. I'm not trying to be apocalyptic or anything, but I've been in trash and been in public works for a number of years. And I think that they're not necessarily vulnerable, but even as an entire region, all of us, all the neighboring jurisdictions have the same issue with trying to deal with these limited resources that we have. So it's important to conserve. And I think moving forward, like adequate public facilities needs to conserve. Because it has to be somehow built into the DNA of how we design things, and also how things are and how they're tested for their adequacy. Because we need to be able to protect the resources, and hopefully the resources, technology will get to a point where we'll be able to stretch these resources further. And really that's the point I wanted to make. I just think that they are vulnerable. They're not vulnerable tomorrow. They're not vulnerable in 10 years, but they certainly are vulnerable because there needs to be the recognition that they are limited. So I just wanted to agree with that one.
Yeah, and this is David here from Office Transportation. So I just want to, thanks for your question, Brett. So you mentioned sidewalks. Of course, sidewalks is really providing transportation resources to pedestrians. So that's definitely one of the things that we would want to look at, like how are we providing that level of service or transportation for pedestrians as part of development projects. So that's a really good point. We'll definitely take that into our notes as we're moving forward. Thanks.
I can't see the hands. I don't see any hands up right now. So at 8:07, is there anything else that anybody wants to raise now, or should we take a motion to adjourn?
Nothing else over here. Thanks for the presentations. Very much. Very, very informative.
Thank you very much,
I'll
everyone.
make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Laura. And a second?
I'll go ahead and second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, everybody. Have a nice week.
Thanks all.
Thank you. See you in 2 weeks, guys.
See you in 2
Thank you.
weeks.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.